Hello and welcome to another episode of the 05 Podcast. My name is Mike Abernathy. I'm your host. And obviously this is a different environment than I usually record in. I am at my house. My wife is at work. My wife's a nurse. So firefighter nurse household. I've got two kids that are at youth camp right now and my youngest is at home. So rather than recording in my church office, I am here at home recording. So hence the decor in the background. And so in today's podcast, I want to bring a very recent study on officer-involved shootings and how that study is applicable to us as church safety ministry members and how we train. You're going to be shocked. I don't know about you. My whole life, I looked at police as the professionals, the guys that they should be able to. They take care of business, right? They were on a pedestal. They were heroes to me. Firefighters, all of them, they're heroes to me. And let me preface this first. I am absolutely not bashing police officers. I'm not bashing firefighters. I'm not bashing anybody. As a firefighter, we're human. We are human. Police officers are human. And it's an unfortunate thing that we as a society have placed these extremely, enormously high expectations on our police officers. We expect them to operate perfect in imperfect environments. And it's a disservice to our police officers. It's a disservice to our community and our expectations. We want our officers to be mistake-free 100% of the time and still be human. And we want them to be robots. That's what society wants our officers to be. We want them to be robots. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. You're not going to get that until these humanoid robots come out and they become police and have no feelings and have no compassion and they just enforce the law and all this AI stuff happens. You get humans. That's what you get. And humans make mistakes. That's the reality of it. But without getting too much into the ethics of robots and all that garbage, we want humans to be our police officers because there's decisions that get made in these dynamic situations that need to be based off of empathy. They need to be based off of human emotion. Robots can't do that. All right, off of my soapbox with that, what I want to talk about is the study done on 15 years of officer-involved shootings with the Dallas Police Department. This study focuses on Dallas. This is just a snapshot of one particular department, 15 years of officer-involved shootings, 139 incidents. To keep things simple, they only focused on officer-involved shootings involving one officer and one suspect. That was it. No multiple officers because that just complicates whose rounds went where. To keep very simple, one officer, one suspect. In this study, and I'm going to read some of this verbatim because I want to make sure that this is accurate. Researchers analyzed 149 real-life officer-involved shootings recorded over a 15-year period by Dallas PD. In nearly half of these encounters, officers firing at a single suspect delivered, quote, complete inaccuracy, unquote. That is, they missed the target entirely. Let me repeat that. In nearly half of these encounters, half of 149, officers firing at a single suspect delivered complete inaccuracy. That is, they missed the target entirely. In 15 incidents, the total number of rounds fired could not be determined. But in the 134 cases where researchers could establish that figure, they calculated that the hit rate, incredibly, was merely 35%. In other words, more than 6 out of 10 rounds fired were misses. I don't know how you guys train, but when I train my team, I train that every round has a lawyer attached to it, and I train that every miss is little Billy or little Susie or my wife or my kids or little Billy's mother. That's their life that you just snuffed out because you missed your target. That's how we train with my team. I know that's not every team, and I know that's a little bit extreme, but is it? That's how we trained when I was in the military, that you had to have 100% rounds on target. If you missed, it was bad. Over half of these officer-involved shootings, they didn't hit the target. Only 35% of rounds fired hit the target. Again, I don't want to bash the police. We just live in an unfortunate world where our expectations are our officers are up here. Their funding is sub-level. Their training is here. And that's because their funding is so low, their staffing is so low, their stress levels are so high. Think about it this way. If your department has limited funding and you have 50 different equal opportunity or HR related trainings that must happen, where do you think the majority of your training budget is going to end up? It's definitely not going to end up at the range. And that's how you get stuff like this. And it's just an unfortunate reality. But it's also more evidence on why we, as church safety ministries, we at churches kind of have to be our own first responders. I've mentioned it time and time again. Ed Monk has a great book out there called The First 30 Seconds, and he breaks down how time and math determine the survivability rate, the victim rate of an active attack. If somebody shoots back or attacks back at the attacker within the first 30 seconds, it is almost guaranteed that your casualty rate will be below 10. Not 0, because the attacker has a vote, but it will be at least below 10. I've never, ever, ever heard of somebody calling 911, police officers getting dispatched, and police officers getting on scene in less than 30 seconds. Never heard of it. If you ever find that, where that whole process happened, please send it my way. I would love to see it. In most cases, the officer was already on scene. If you get a police officer that fast, they were already on scene. They're right around the block. So we have to be our own first responders if an active attack happens. Obviously, according to this study, we need to be training well. We need to be training better. Some of the things that this study discusses is that officers don't train for the dynamics of the shooting environment. Officers train on a flat range with paper targets, stationary. Right? Targets are stationary, officers are stationary. Perfect stance, perfect sight picture, timing is easy, very simple. How do you train? How does your team train? Do you go to an indoor range and you shoot on a designated lane with your paper target that you set it's set at a certain distance. You can't do controlled pairs, you can't do rapid fire, you can't shoot from the draw. It's from low ready only, and it's one round at a time. How many of you train that way? I'm not bashing it. It's better than nothing. But is that realistic for what may happen at your church? Think about the possible dynamics of the shooting that could happen at your church, right? Crowded environment, possibly dim lighting, possibly loud noises, echoing to be unsure where the shots are coming from, long distance shots, unclear foreground and background, drywall that doesn't stop bullets with the potential of classrooms being on the other side, right? Moving people, young people, screaming people, moving vehicles, moving target, right? Inability to recognize the target in the mass of people. Those are all dynamics that are potential in an active attack at your campus, at your church. Have you ever calculated the distances of potential shots you might have to take at your church? Have you ever done those measurements? I can tell you, from the back of my worship center to the front, to the stage, it is a 27-yard shot. Diagonally, from where we post what we call our quarterback in the very back, from the quarterback to one of the emergency exits on a diagonal, it's almost a 50-yard shot. In the child's hallway, from the entry point to the very back of the hallway, it's a 37-yard shot. Have you measured those distances? I highly recommend you do, and you start training a little bit at those distances, right? Because if there's the possibility you're going to shoot at that distance, then you need to train for that possibility. It's just a fact. Are you training for the dynamics? Are you training while moving? Are you training from the draw? Are you training with overlapping targets and having to change your angle of fire? Because most church safety teams that I'm aware of, that I have interacted with, most church safety teams, they fire a simple law enforcement qualification test. Right? They use their local PDs, their state PDs, their state LTC or license to carry or concealed carry test. A lot of church teams now have gone to the FBI course. I'm a big fan of the FBI course because it goes back to 25 yards. It trains marksmanship under duress, and it trains marksmanship or tests marksmanship at distance. But do those tests truly show you the capability of your shooters in dynamic environments? I'm going to argue that it does not. And my friend Oscar, if you're watching this, I know you're nodding your head in agreement. Qualifications are good, but they don't tell you what your shooters are truly capable of. You need to understand, and your shooters need to understand their competency with the weapon. How well do they handle the weapon from the draw? How well do they handle under duress? How well do they handle while moving, while the target's moving, with overlapping targets? How well do they handle that? How well do they handle the decision-making that comes with potentially needing to shoot? Those are things that you need to test. Those are the things that you need to practice on. Those are the things that you need to understand if you're a safety team leader or you're a safety team member. You need to understand your capabilities, and you need to understand your team's capabilities. And I'm not talking about thinking that we're all John Wick because we shoot once a month. Shooting once a month is great, don't get me wrong. But I promise you this, we're not all John Wick. Look, these officers, they're our professionals. They're the ones, they get regular training, should be getting regular training paid for. It's part of their job, right? We have to pay for training. We have to pay for range access, and we have to pay for ammo, which usually does what? It usually detracts people from training frequently, right? So think about this when you're developing your training plans for your range days. Think about this as you practice, hopefully with dry fire. I'm a huge fan of the Mantis X Laser Academy program. It is a great way to practice training your first shot from the draw. You have to rack the slide every time, which can build training scars, but it's a great method of training a small target to simulate distance. You can train getting off the X and moving. You can have a timer, which gives you a little bit of stress. You can, if you get creative, have shoot and no shoot targets. You just got to get creative with how you set it up. If you have a partner, have them set up the targets with your eyes closed. You're in the ready position. And when the beep goes off, you have to ID the target, get off the X, draw, and shoot the target, and then look at the time period in which you do it. It tells you what your capability is. All right. At the range, you can do the same thing. Set up multiple targets. Okay. Start with just two. Start with two targets at a defined distance. And start with your eyes closed, and whoever is setting up the course, they interchange the targets however they want to do. And when they say up, or they can shoot into the berm, and you have to react to the sound of gunfire, open your eyes, get off the X, ID your target, draw and shoot, and make sure your rounds are on target. And then change it to 3 targets, 1 shoot, 2 no shoot. And then 4, and then 5, all shoot, all no shoot, 1 shoot, or 4 no shoots, 2 shoots. And then you change up the distance. So you have the shooter with their eyes closed, you move them around the range and you disorient them, and they're at an unknown distance. And now they got to figure out how to take that shot at whatever distance they're at. Do they close the distance? They've got to get off the X. How does that happen? This is very similar to how my team does our judgmental course. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about our judgmental course because I wrote about it in my Substack. And so it's Firearms Qualifications for Safety Teams. That's the Substack title. Look it up. That's the course that I do for my team. And we add to it. We go so deep in this judgmental pistol course, and it's a qualification course. You have to pass it to carry on our team. We go so as far as you have multi-level targets. You have a lot of no shoots. You have 1 or 2 shoots. You have to engage the targets. You can't hit any targets. You can't draw without IDing your target. Then you have to communicate to our command element. You have to communicate to our command element, and then you have to address injuries. We create this entire shooting environment that you, as a testing person, we create this entire environment that you have to think on your feet. That is one of the toughest things to replicate in training, especially on a flat range. But if you can get creative and you can replicate these decision-making processes, the more that you train the decision-making process, the more accustomed your team members are to making those decisions quickly and under duress, right? Because that is the name of the game. When it comes to an active attack event, it is not always clear cut and dry. If you've seen the videos from the West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement, Texas, that is the most cut and dry, obvious active attack that I've ever seen on video. The guy got up, he shot 2 safety team members. The 3rd safety team member ear-holed him from 15 yards, for 17 yards, I believe. All right, the guy was walking across, and the safety team member ear-holed him over the top of ducking congregants. My brain farted. And that was clear cut, right? So train your decision-making processes. Try to make the environment as dynamic as possible. Train to communicate. Communication is the first skill that goes out the window in a stressful environment. So you have to train that on a regular basis. Right? Being able to paint a picture in as few words as possible is a developed skill. It does not come naturally. So you need to train that. Right? Officers get a lot of practice in communicating under duress. They get a lot of practice at that. In fact, I would argue they get more practice at that than they get at shooting in dynamic environments. So a lot of officers are very good at communicating. Obviously, by the study, we need to work on shooting. But as safety teams, we don't get a lot of practice communicating under duress. We don't get a lot of practice shooting under duress. We don't get a lot of practice, real life practice in emergency environments. So we have to formulate our training to simulate stressful environments as best as possible. Okay? And I'm a huge proponent of the crawl, walk, run method. Please do not go out and immediately set up multiple targets and multiple layers with multiple shots and communication and people running back. Don't make these ultra complicated shooting environments and go straight at it wanting to be John Wick for Jesus, because you're setting yourself up for failure. You are. You have to develop the basic fundamental skill sets before you can get into this ninja stuff. So if you cannot effectively shoot from the draw and put a round on target at 3 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, 25 yards, if you can't effectively do that in an expedient manner, you probably shouldn't be shooting on the move just yet. Develop that skill first, and then do it from the move, moving forward, moving sideways at short distances, and then bring your distances back. Right? But again, we have to start basic and work our way up. Don't go straight into the ninja stuff, because you're not setting yourself up for success. You're not. You will always resort to the fundamentals if they are deeply ingrained in there. That's what muscle memory is. Muscle memory is unconscious competence. That's what muscle memory is. If you're not aware, there are different levels of competence. There is conscious competence, meaning you can do it, but you have to think about it, right? Most safety team members, some of the best trained safety team members that I've worked with on my own team, many of them are still at the conscious competence level. There is also conscious incompetence. That is, you know what you're not good at and what you need to work on. You know you're not good at a particular skill and you know you need to work on it. That's not a bad place to be. It's actually a very good place to be because now you know what you have to work on. There is unconscious incompetence, meaning you're bad at it and you don't know it. This is usually the folks that have a cognitive bias. They have what's called Dunning-Kruger effect. Right? Dunning-Kruger effect is you think you're better at something than you really are. I watched John Wick. I watched Pat McAfee. I watched all these videos, and therefore I can do exactly what they do, how fast and how well they do it. No, it doesn't work like that. None of these emergency skills work like that, right? You have to train it. You're not going to be expert level just by watching a YouTube video, all right? That is unconscious incompetence. It's Dunning-Kruger effect. It's you think you're good at it, but you're not. You don't know what you're not good at. And then the level we all want to get to is that unconscious competence. Unconscious competence means that I can do a particular skill without having to think about it. I can draw from my waistband, whether it's 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or appendix. I can draw from wherever I carry my weapon. I can get it on target, and I can squeeze a round off without even having to think about it. What I'm thinking next level because I've made the decision to shoot. That action is happening unconsciously, and now I'm thinking about the other things. What's behind the target? What's below? What's in front of the target? What am I going to have to do after I shoot? How do I communicate this? Do I have victims? Where are they at? You're thinking above the initial action. That's the level we all want to train to. That's the level our officers need to be training to, but unfortunately, as this study shows, they're probably not. Okay? So take a very close look at your training program for your weapons training. This is applicable to any skill set, but we're going to focus on firearms because that's what everybody loves to train, and that is the most deadly skill that we use. So take a real close look at your training program. Take a close look, whether you're a team leader or a team member, take a really close look at your skill set. Where are you competent and where are you not? Where do you think you're competent? Test it and see whether or not you really are. And if you're not, work on it. In what areas are you unconsciously competent? Still work on those areas. Maintain that muscle memory because I guarantee you, shooting skills, decision-making skills, communication skills, all of those skills start to drop off over time if we don't keep them sharp. They do. It's just a fact. That's how we adapt as human beings, is if we don't see something as a priority, our mind, our muscle memory, our neuromuscular connections are going to start dumping that. So if you're not training on a regular basis, whether it's thought-making processes, communicating, shooting, medical skills, any of the skills that you need as a safety team member, if you're not training that on a regular basis or at least thinking about it on a regular basis, you're going to lose it. Use it or lose it, period. But examine your training, look at the levels of competence you have, and work on improving them. When you go to the range, start basic, work your way up. You want to get to the point where you are practicing in dynamic environments. Test your competency. Push the envelope in a safe manner, right? Push your speed. Push your accuracy. Get mad at rounds thrown, right? Give your teammates a hard time if they throw a round. On my team, you have to name the round. If you throw a round off target, you have to name it. In our game right now is we name the rounds after each other's kids, and it makes you think twice. I guarantee it. When you name that round Little Billy, and your team member's son is Little Billy, it makes you think real hard about how fast you and how accurate you squeeze that trigger and throw that round. All right? I love training, and I hope you do too. And these are all skills. Yes, we talk about this in a safety ministry environment, but these are all skills that we can implement to be the first responder on scene wherever we're at. Whether it's protecting ourselves or protecting our families, these are all skills that as we develop them, they change how we live our lives, right? Preparedness is how we live without fear. We live without fear because we know we have God's protection and we know that we've prepared for it. Through God's grace, we've prepared for these incidents. Fear happens when you don't have faith in God's protection and you haven't prepared for it. Prepare for everything. Be ready. Protect yourselves. Protect your families. Protect His people and give Him the glory. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.